I'm not, but
Looks like an awful lot of equipment for a small meeting.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was trying to talk to him, but I accidentally hit the mic.
Good. Good evening, everybody. I'm Doug Cole. They can't hear me. I'm Doug Cole, and I'm chairperson of the Village Partnership Initiative Task Force that the town has been running here for a while. I'm going to wait till my wife finds a seat, and then we can begin. What I would like to do tonight is I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about how we arrived at where we did at this moment tonight. The committee's been working for quite some time, and so of course the people on the committee sort of get used to thinking about these ideas, but I know for people in the audience here this is all completely new. So I'm just going to start at the very beginning with the background and give that portion of it, and then we'll turn it over to Orion to sort of clean up the mess that I made. The beginning of this whole process actually goes back about a year and a half when there was an article in the local news media that the Maine Department of Transportation, and from now on I'm going to refer to that as the MDOT, but it's the Maine Department of Transportation. They had a notice about rebuilding or repairing the bridge here in town. And a group of concerned citizens thought we'd like to be part of that in the design. And so we got together at Union Hall just on our own. And we invited Vicki Dudera, who's our local state representative, and she was very good about getting us in touch with Maine Department of Transportation, the Bridge Department. And so we had that first meeting, and it was about a week after that, and again, this is about a year and a half ago, John Dukes sent me an email knowing I was part of that group, and the email was to introduce this new program that the MDOT was introducing, and that was called the Village Partnership Initiative. And the idea here was that the state wanted to partner, that's the partner part of it, with villages around the state, and that's the other part is the village, to look at their downtown areas where the businesses were, and to look at the transportation system around the village and how people got into and out of the village and how to do it efficiently, safely, conveniently, so you'd have good transportation, but it would also promote business. And so we saw that and we thought that the bridge is such an integral part of our transportation needs in town, it'd be nice to sort of try to bring this all together. And so the select board agreed, and the select board then went and appointed a committee. And I'm on the committee. Chairperson is Mary Jane Young, Michelle Gallant, Kimberly Graffam, Sally Cook. Have I hit everybody? Oh, well, Denise, yeah, and Denise Munger is our select board liaison person. At the MDOT and the Bridge Department, it's Julia Brask, and Stephen Cole, who's no relation, is the regional coordinator for the MDOT. So this committee got formed, and basically our task was to look at the downtown area and its surrounds and see what the problems were, and to put together an RFP, a request for proposal, that would be sent out to various transportation engineering firms around the state, who we would then select to come in and do the work, and the state would pay for half of that, and the town would pay for half of that. So over the course of the winter, this committee met, and I think we identified many problems, which we'll get into here shortly, that most of us are familiar with. You know, it's an old bridge, it's narrow, it's only got one sidewalk, there are no bike lanes, there's traffic, speeding on Pascal Avenue, there's no parking. I think everybody in this room is probably familiar with the areas of with the problems of the downtown area. So we met and kind of came up with areas we'd like to see addressed and put together this RFP. And I guess it was in the fall, we submitted that to the MDOT. And I'll be honest, I didn't have a lot of confidence that it would be accepted. You know, Rockport, I think some people look at as this kind of a wealthy town. They don't need this sort of attention and stuff. But yeah, letter of intent. Okay, so they got that, and they agreed that it looked. We passed the first stage. They looked at it and they said, "Yeah, you people are on the right track. Keep going." And then we did the RFP. Okay, and lo and behold, the MDOT looked at it and said, "Yeah, this looks like a good project. We'd like to work with you on it." So we were pretty excited about that, and that all came through this late winter. And so once we had the go-ahead, we then started looking at the different engineering firms that do this sort of work, transportation and stuff like that, and made the selection. And our selection was the Sewall Group, and they're here tonight to hear how everybody here thinks we did on identifying some of these problems, what problems did we miss, and where do we go from here. So does that sum it up pretty well? Okay, well, I'm now going to, let me add one other thing that's important, okay? So this is just an engineering study, okay? They'll come in, they'll say, you could do this would look beautiful, but then what do you do? Well, the other part of the Village Partnership Initiative is the state will help us look for federal funding to execute the plan that we come up with. So, you know, right now this is all just pie in the sky, but hopefully if we can keep this moving ahead and the town thinks it's good ideas, then we'll go ahead and apply for federal funding and maybe help clean things up a little bit. So I'm going to turn it over to Orion at this point, and he can introduce our guests tonight, and then it'll be pretty much up to them.
Hi, everybody. My name is Orion Thomas. I'm the Planning and Development Director for the Town of Rockport, and I'm working with the Village Partnership Initiative Task Force for their project that we have before us with Sewall. At any point throughout this process, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to my office. I'm more than welcome to meet with you, answer your questions at any point in time. So make sure that you use me as a resource if you ever need to. So Doug really did a good job summing everything up. So, you know, we did our letter of intent, like he said. We submitted that to MDOT. They said, yeah, you're good to go. They awarded us a grant to cover half of the expense of this up to a particular threshold. And then we went through an RFP process, and we did a review, and we chose Sewall for this process. So I'm going to take it now to Diane. Well,
okay.
Here's yours. And,
yeah, I will. I'll introduce the team. So I'm Diane Morabito, and I'm Vice President of Traffic Engineering for Sewall. And with me tonight is Brett Hart, who is our Senior Vice President of Engineering. I also have my assistant, Noah Beauvert, here. He's going to help process slides. And Steve Thompson is from Viewshed, and they are on the team as our landscape architecture firm to support us in making sure that everything is aesthetically pleasing. So the basic purpose of tonight's meeting is to really solicit public comment. We want to introduce the study to you. We really haven't done much work yet. We've heard concerns from the committee, but we really want to hear from the public as to what you think the needs are for transportation infrastructure, what's missing, what deficiencies you see, and what your priorities are as well, because there's probably going to be a place where we're not going to be able to do everything, and so what's most important is something we'll be trying to get at in this study. The committee put together the study purpose and need, which I will read to you. It's fairly short. Rockport's small historic downtown has been revitalized over the past decade, but needs more infrastructure to support ongoing economic development. The study will plan for improvements to better accommodate pedestrians and cyclists in the downtown village and harbor area and on Route 90 so students can walk or bike to school. The scheduled renovation or replacement of the Goose River Bridge hopefully will better connect it with Central Street and Rockport Marine Park. The study will also address the need for more parking downtown and traffic calming measures. Finally, any infrastructure improvements proposed by the study will be designed to honor Rockport's historic character and natural beauty. So that is the purpose and need for the study. The study area was defined in the request for proposals as extending along Pascal Avenue, basically beginning at Route 1, going to Main Street, connecting to Central Street, and then up a little bit of Union Street. So basically from Pascal through the downtown village area. And then also extending from Pascal along West Street, out Route 90 to the schools, so that we could look at providing possibly sidewalks or bike lanes for the schools. The known issues that were identified through the RFP by the committee and just by our little bit of preliminary review is traffic moving through the village area, speeding on Pascal Avenue, narrow sidewalks and walkability, that there are no sidewalks to the schools on Route 90, biking on Pascal Avenue, Goose River Bridge, and through the village is difficult. Parking downtown. The hills present grading challenges and constraints to this project, and biking to and from the schools on Route 90. As part of this study, we will be doing quite a bit of data collection. We will be doing traffic, basically turning movement counts. We'll be counting vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycles. We will be counting the key intersections of Route 1 and Pascal, Route 1 and West Street, Pascal and West Street, Pascal and Main Street, and also Central and Union Street. We'll also be doing speed and delay runs, and that will help us identify places where there's speeding, and also will let us know where there are congestion points, such as in the downtown village. Why don't we, yeah, okay, go, yeah. We're also going to be doing a parking study in the village area. We will be doing a parking inventory, see how many spaces are there, and then what the demand is and turnover and those sorts of things. And then we're also doing a very detailed field review, where we'll be walking the corridors, looking at the existing sidewalk conditions, looking at ADA deficiencies, you know, where you're lacking truncated domes, where you don't have proper curb ramps, where you have stairs instead of ramps, so things like that. We have done a little bit of work looking at safety also and traffic volumes. In terms of safety, there are no high crash locations anywhere within the study area or even any locations approaching the high crash criteria. So we don't have anything that's been identified that way. In terms of traffic volumes, it was a little surprising, I think, that they have actually, everywhere within the study area, they have declined from 2010 through 2013, and then again through 2022. There was a little bit of growth in traffic volumes at some locations between 2013 and 2016, but then there's been a drop in volumes between 2016 and 2022. I don't know why that table is not printing right, but that's something new. Okay, so now we're just gonna look at some pictures of that ViewSet actually took of some of the areas and where we know we've got some existing problems and deficiencies. That's just your general overview. As you all know, showing the bridge that is to either be rehabbed or reconstructed by DOT. They intend to make that decision, I guess, this summer. So I've been told that if they can reuse the superstructure, they will just be rehabbing the existing bridge. But if the superstructure isn't adequate, then they would be reconstructing a brand new bridge. So as we know, we'll wait till we get to the other pictures, but Okay, so here's Main Street, there's the bridge. As Doug already mentioned, there's sidewalk just on one side. There's really no room for bicycles. A lot of people feel the sidewalk is on the wrong side, because if you want to get to the harbor or to the businesses on the harbor side, it's on the wrong side of the road. As I said, there's, at the end of that crosswalk coming off the bridge, there are stairs. Those don't meet ADA requirements for somebody in a chair. They could not maneuver that. And then you just have a picture of Main Street itself and the narrow lanes and the curving steep grade. When we move to Central and Union Street, you can see we've got parking on both sides downtown, sidewalk on one side primarily, sidewalk on both sides at the beginning. Again, we've got a sidewalk that ends in stairs, not just one flight of stairs, but 2 flights of stairs. Up on Union Street, we've got nice paved shoulders, but they're also used for parking, so therefore they're not necessarily available for cyclists. And then again, at the other end by the Opera House, we've got parking both sides and just sidewalk one side. And pretty narrow lanes when we consider the parking, so there's not much room for cyclists. If we look at Pascal, we have a sidewalk basically running the whole way one side. Part of it's held up or above that retaining wall. We have a very wide, long crosswalk at High Street, which is problematic because that exposes your pedestrian to traffic for a lot longer. You want to minimize your crossing distances, and that's a very long crossing. Again, we've got nice shoulders along portions of that, which would provide for bikes, but again, it is utilized also for parking, so therefore, there's no place left then for your cyclist. That's a good picture of the basic downtown, showing some of the grading constraints. If you look from the bridge in the upper left-hand photo, you can see you've got retaining walls already, and you've got guardrail protecting both roadways, and then a steep slope. So that really limits what you're going to be able to do in terms of, you know, widening or anything, because you're going to have to steepen that slope that's already quite steep to begin with. At the corner, we can see at the corner of West Street, you know, we don't really have ADA compliant curb ramps. We don't have truncated domes that provide for somebody who's visually impaired to know that they're at a street crossing or a hazard. So there are a lot of ADA deficiencies that we're picking up. And again, a really nice picture of Pascal where we do have a nice sidewalk, pretty wide shoulders, and then the sidewalk does move off to be protected by an esplanade, which is even more comfortable with the pedestrians because they're not roadside, they're removed a little bit from the road. And then on Route 90, that's where the schools are, and we have, you know, wide 8-foot, 10-foot shoulders with 12-foot lanes, and it encourages higher speeds. We just came in Route 90 tonight, and the travel speed of the people in front of us was 60. So although there's width there for bicycles, I'm not sure you want children certainly biking on Route 90 as it sits today. And there's certainly no facilities for pedestrians. And then West Street is also in the study area. You have a sidewalk on one side. It's in pretty poor shape in some locations where the curbs have really been broken up, and there's, again, no way that a wheelchair could negotiate it. And then pretty much, those are just some of the examples of the deficiencies we've seen, and what we're really here tonight is to hear of the problems that you see. And we have 4 aerial photos that we can use and go through as you identify areas where you see concerns, or you think there should be a crosswalk, or you know, you think their bike lanes are really important in a particular area. We're really here to hear input from the public as to what you want this study to consider, what you think is most important to you.
Have you talked to anyone from the Camden Rockport Sidewalk and Pathways Committee who has been studying these issues for the past 20 years?
We have not yet. We've just pretty much kicked off.
Because we've applied for a grant for the DOT to look at the Route 90 issue. We've been trying to get pathway out there for the students, and now that a certain person is no longer present, we may actually get permission to go across that piece of property.
And when we take public comment, do we want names and addresses, or do we just?
Yeah, I
Yeah, name,
Shaw, Pascal Avenue.
okay.
Would you please, before you go too much further, announce where the survey on our website is? Because I took it today, it asks, give you time to think and write, and seems to me to be a well-structured survey. So I think the more people that know about it, the more will take it.
Yes, Steve, why don't you speak about that for a minute?
Yeah, so we, just knowing, I mean, this is a really well-attended meeting today, but as he mentioned, we developed this site that, that's got a survey on it. A little bit of information about the project that's similar to what's being presented here, but for people who didn't have a chance to make it or people who don't have a chance to talk tonight, you can go there. Right now, I know it is advertised on the town's website. Maybe we can get that out on some other venues, Facebook and what have you. And yes, on there you have ability to take a survey. It shows the study area and kind of list your thoughts. It's really brief and it's allows you to write. There's a couple multiple choice. It's not an exam. It's not a test. It's a way for you guys to get your voice out there, and you can spread it around to people and we want to get as much impact or much feedback as we can to make the biggest impact. So, all right.
How will the results of that survey be published and made available to the attendees?
It could be. We could put those. We can export those to a spreadsheet format or a PDF. Put those on.
Do you have any of those results tonight with you?
It just went live yesterday, probably midway through the day. So I think there were 2 or 3 responses so far. But it's going to be live for the next few months as they're taking data and gathering information from the public. So it'll fill in maybe at certain thresholds in the project. We can put that out there and read what other people are saying. I don't think it requires you to put your name or anything like that. It's just, yeah.
If you go to the town website, across the top, there's a column called projects. Click on that, look for the traffic infrastructure study, click on that, it'll take you right to it. It does not ask for any identification, and it takes maybe 5 minutes, but you'll probably want to spend a half hour thinking before you put your words in.
Yeah,
And
so you go to projects, traffic
Traffic infrastructure.
traffic infrastructure, and then you'll see a link for survey.
Right.
That's what
And we've been asked to use the mic so that people at home can hear. So anybody, if Orion can maybe run the mic around
I will run the mic around.
Okay.
Anybody that wants to talk.
so that the public can hear as well that's watching from home.
We'll go here and we'll go back here.
So question, I saw that you've come out Route 90 to the schools, which makes perfect sense, and you truncated up Union. What criteria? It doesn't look like it goes too far up Union. I'm just curious how you decided on the geometry.
That was decided by the town when they put out the request for proposals. So that study area was selected, I assume, by the committee.
Thank you. I'm Richard Remsen. I live in West Rockport. A couple of things. You mentioned on the bridge, whether the sidewalk was on the best side. Well, the bridge, to me, seems to need sidewalks on both sides.
I would agree.
Yeah. The other question I have is if you're intending to make Route 90 a little more traffic calming, more pedestrian, bike friendly, would you be planning an esplanade?
There's a lot of right-of-way there, but there are some grades. But we haven't gone that far yet. But yes, or separated bike lane, or there's any number of things that could be done there. At Route 90, there is good right-of-way. I believe where I've looked at it, it's 100 feet. So it gives us some good possibilities to design.
The other question is, there are a lot of children who live out in West Rockport. So if you're going to only do the esplanade or the pathways to the school from the coastal village to the school, I think you're missing an opportunity to bring people from West Rockport down to the school.
Yeah, again, that was the study area we were given that was originally defined, and I'm sure it's just a starting point that over time, if we get it that far, it could maybe be expanded beyond there. Yeah, there was-
Bob Lawrence, I live on Pascal Avenue. I have 2 quick questions. One is, how will you manage the fact that Pascal Avenue is state road and the rest of the area that you're working on is town road?
The only road that's actually town road is West Street. The town may have responsibility for what's called maintenance, but the roads are actually all state facilities, except for West Street. West Street is a town road.
And then it seems to me that a lot of the traffic going through the village is to avoid the several lights on Route 1, people commuting to and from Camden. How is that going to be factored in?
We will be doing traffic counts, so we will pick some of that up and see how it's occurring. We're planning to count in summer, under peak summer conditions, and we're also planning to count again in early fall when the schools are open and summer traffic is not necessarily as heavy. So we should be able to pick up some of that cut-through traffic, and certainly if they're cutting through and speeding, we should pick that up in the travel runs. If we're getting a lot of speeding, which is typical of cut-throughs, they're typically in a hurry and cutting through to get somewhere quickly.
Just to fill in on the one question about, well, how did we define the study area? And, you know, that's a tough question. You get 7 local citizens who are volunteers, and, you know, what defines the village area? Remember, this is the Village Partnership Initiative. Where does it begin? Where does it end? So we were trying to focus mainly on the village area, which, you know, I think most of us have a rough idea. The Route 90 corridor, as Helen mentioned earlier, has had a lot of attention over the years. How do we get out to the school? How do we get out to the school? So that was added kind of at the end. And I realize some people may argue that that's not really village, but again, as Helen noted, when we're talking about sidewalks and intermodal transportation, it seemed appropriate to include that in our study. The other question, yes, about using Pascal and Union Street as a cut-through. That's certainly recognized by the committee, and the MDOT has a long time realized that stop sign down on Route 1 there as you come into Camden is an issue. A lot of people like to avoid that area, and so they use this as a cut-through. So that's on their radar. Now, I can't tell you what they're going to do. It's their road, and they can do what they want. But we've expressed our concerns to them about that intersection, and so it's under consideration for change. That may upset some people in Camden, but.
Hopefully the microphone.
I'm Bonnie Gibbons, and I used to live on Franklin Street. I don't anymore. But I don't know if you've taken this into consideration or if it's part of this study. But when you come down the Franklin Street hill and you get to the bottom, you can't see if there's a car coming around the corner off the bridge. And people tend to speed up right there. And also you can't see cars coming in the other direction when cars are parked right up to the very corner.
Yeah, that's important.
We do have a sign. It's on the very corner that says no parking from here to corner. It's on the corner.
Okay.
Squeeze by. So I'm going to hand it to you first, and then if you could pass it down.
Have you considered one-way streets that go in a circle around?
I've thought about, I mean, we have not, like I said, we're just starting, so we haven't done a lot of work, but I have thought of one-way streets only because your downtown is so constrained. The problem is finding that one-way pair that's nearby, that goes the opposite way. Because that is something that would allow you to have wider sidewalks, bike lanes, and one lane of travel, say, through the village. But you'd need to find an alternate, path for the opposite direction that's nearby, and you have so many grading constraints. And so it is something I'm certainly going to look at. Yes.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Bob Colmer. I happen to live right at that end of the study area next to the schools. So I get to see two things happen every day, and we'll get to that in a minute. Has there been any discussion about realignment of the bridge at all? How much wiggle room do you have in the realignment of the bridge?
I think that really depends on whether they reconstruct it or they rehab it, and they are making that decision.
Haven't decided yet?
It's coming this summer. They,
So, yeah, once we get the report back, we'll know if we're gonna get a new bridge or if they're gonna make do with the current structure, substructure of it.
Yeah.
So if it's a current substructure, it's gonna stay the same trajectory. If it's a new bridge, we might be able to tweak it one way or the other.
Okay.
When is
Sec-
the public gonna be told about any of this?
When is the public gonna be told?
When?
About,
About the bridge? I've seen absolutely nothing.
as soon as we know something about it.
But what if we don't like what they say?
You understand, it's the state owned bridge. So hopefully, that's why, part of this process is, like, we're showing in this process, so I'm glad everybody's here. We're gathering all this information, we're creating a story, they're putting together a report. This is all the demand we have, so please give us the bridge that we want.
right.
That's really what we're doing.
Item 2, you're going to address the drainage, lighting, signage, and I heard you mention the ADA for the area downtown?
Yes, not necessarily, I mean, we're looking at infrastructure itself.
You look at the lighting levels and the drainage issues along this,
Lighting was not included,
okay?
and drainage was not necessarily, I mean, drainage would be considered in when we're placing new facilities, but to correct any existing drainage deficiencies was not.
Can you
In
write
the
down
scope.
lighting so that that possibly can be addressed for the town as a deficiency in the scope?
Yeah, no, certainly we can consider lighting.
The-
Yeah,
And even in some of the traffic areas as well. Third thing, since COVID, the traffic has changed on 90 for the schools, okay? There's a wonderful school bus system that's operated, but no one rides it.
right.
Everyone goes by car to and from the schools. So the traffic volume and turning has changed at both schools. And it's,
And that's happened statewide.
okay, that's valid.
Yeah, no,
So
it's very valid.
it's become a turning movement crisis along Route 90. Now, at 4 times a day, there are independent 15-mile-an-hour speed limits. There's one for the high school in the morning and one for the elementary school, different time in the morning. Then there's one for the high school in the afternoon and one for the elementary school in the afternoon. A local person always abides by that. Foreigners do not abide by the 15-mile-an-hour speed limit. I look at it twice a day,
Yeah.
and it's just ignored. Our police try to do a good job up there, and my understanding is that it's illegal in the state of Maine to put those automated radar facilities where you issue a ticket.
It is.
So
That's
people,
correct.
they'll just 60 miles an hour. Kids, the parents in the area will not allow their kids to walk or cross that street because the speed limit of 15 is ignored. Absolutely. I'm waiting to hear the sirens one day. It's going to happen. With the turning movements, it's even more of an issue. I didn't see the turning movements addressed in your scope at both schools.
Yeah, we did not plan traffic counts at the schools.
It's going to have to be added. It's going to have to be added because it's far and above what can be considered for a traffic light. I think you'll see more turning movements there than you will at other places that have traffic lights in town.
Yeah.
So if you could look at that, and we have to figure out a way to reduce the speed working with the state or with Representative Dodaro, whatever's necessary to reduce the speed along the school section from the start of where the speed restrictions begin for the high school until where it ends for the elementary school. It's a disaster, and we're only postponing the inevitable. Okay, I wish.
No, I understand there are high speeds, and it's a concern, and a lot of people certainly, and I wouldn't let my children ride or walk to school there, so.
And people don't. That's,
Yep.
so, please, could you consider discussing that with the community to
Yep,
augment your
absolutely.
scope?
Yep.
Thank you.
Hi, Bill McClellan. I live on Summer Street. Couple issues. One is the bike path. Right where your survey ends on Union Street, the bike path starts. And part of the problem is that bike path has been let to deteriorate. It's not being maintained. There's no stripes. So I often see, particularly in summertime, people biking from Camden towards Rockport on the other side of the street, not using the bike path. So it'd be nice to make the bike path more welcoming and make it for bikes. It's a great path, and it wasn't here. It was created, and it's a lovely path, but it needs some encouragement. And the other thing is that's not mentioned and is this intersection right here and Russell Avenue. And Russell Avenue, people just really talk about speeding. It's not everybody, but a lot of people really come whipping through there, which is scary for walking and definitely dangerous for biking. So it's not part of the survey, but it would help to calm things here. It would help out there. Thanks.
Yeah, hi. My name is Taylor Allen, and I'm an owner of Rockport Marine, which is the building at the bigger building at the bottom of the screen, just to the right of center. I've got two questions. How do you work with the state, given that a lot of the roads are state-owned roads? What kinds of influence do you have in terms of their decision-making?
I don't have a lot of influence personally, but the committee, yes. And
We are very fortunate that Vicki Dudere is actually on the MDOT Supervisory Committee. So, and she's been very interested in this project. So we're lucky. We sort of have a way to poke the bear.
Well, in DOT, when they do a project like this, they do want to see something come out of it. So DOT has funded this project with the understanding that they would like to see some improvements here. So the next step is, after the study identifies the priorities and where things should go, is the town applying to DOT for some assistance with funding those. And generally speaking, DOT listens to what towns want. So I would think that there would be a good way to move forward.
Great, thank you. And then secondly, we move a lot of heavy boats up the hill, and mostly we either go across the bridge or up the hill, leaving the bridge on the left. So, a one-way road around that would be really difficult for us. We can't make tight turns with those rigs, so taking a right turn would be really problematic.
Right.
Hi, Sam Temple, the other owner of Rockport Marine, and I live in the village. Yeah, to follow up on what Taylor was saying, I also have concern about, heavy industry being limited by road, but also, that we define pedestrian space enough so that, that hill can be tricky right now with the new ice cream shop and a lot of people in the road and heavy equipment. That's one piece, and the other piece is we're a business of about 60 employees right now. We bring a lot of people in. Most of my workers can't afford to live in Rockport, and I have a concern that we don't slow things down so much that the commuting radius effectively shortens.
Okay. Good comment.
I'm Nance Brown, and I live on High Street. And one of the things that's happened maybe in the last 5 years is the sidewalk on Pascal was redone, which it certainly needed to be redone. But what it's done is it's really decreased the visibility when you're coming off High Street and you're trying to turn left to go across the bridge. You can turn onto that road and suddenly there is a car right on your bumper because you can't see the traffic coming off Pascal, which we all agree goes way too fast anyhow. So if there's some way to increase the visibility when you're trying to make that turn, it's really a very dangerous kind of situation. You just kind of have to hold your breath, cross your fingers, and hope.
Definitely check that out.
Question for you.
Go ahead.
Is the entrance to Marine Park a part of the scope?
Is the entrance to Marine Park a part of the scope? No, not right now, not a part of the scope. No. You're talking about right here?
Well,
Ryan, it's in the RFP, in the address that Sewall made, is conversation about the two paths down to the park and how awkward they are and dangerous they are. So I do think that they are aware of that. I'm not sure what the community direction to them was. They seem to be smarter than we are.
So what's your question then about the Marine Park?
Is the entrance to Marine Park included in the scope, or is it going to happen as a part of the bridge realignment? So you all know, it's a terrible entrance. We have to deal with what we're dealt.
It is a terrible entrance, so
Is it going to be widened? Is it going to be more friendly?
What we've been told by DOT is that there were actually 4F federal funds used for that park, which therefore says nothing can be touched there. So
With anything that's funded by them?
anything that's funded with federal 4F funds is what I was told that was built, and even the bridge couldn't come closer to the park because nothing can infringe on that park or anything that's been utilized, those sort of funds. That's what I've been told, but we will do some more checking.
We're going to have to go into detail a little bit on that. So
Yeah.
on the park, on this side here, and I do believe on this side, this has some of those federal funds on it. So in terms of the bridge coming any closer, that's non-negotiable. But we do own a portion right here and this right over here, so it can be aligned a little bit differently this way. In terms of the entrance side of it, we're not quite sure yet. A lot of it's going to depend on the study and the analysis that's going to be run. Is that good?
And to address Jan's question, those pathways that do lead from the bridge down to the park, that's definitely on our radar, and we know they need to be better maintained, but clearly that's part of the transportation in and around the village. So, yes, that is on our radar, Jan.
Question mark to be determined.
Yes. Anybody else right now? We got one back here.
My name is Stuart Smith, and my family and I own the commercial properties that are on the water side of Central Street. One question I have is with regards to the parks. There's been some discussion about building a sewer plant in the park upriver from the Pascal Bridge. There's not much town support for that, but public support. But is that part of this study as well, the park that's on the other side of the bridge as well? And then the other question I have, or not question, but suggestion for you, is there is a group of young girls who ride their bikes every day from Rockport to the middle school. And that would be a good group to interview and find out what they do. There's probably anywhere from 6 to a dozen of them, and they go every day all through the year.
From the village.
Yeah.
From this area, from the village to
From Rockport Village,
Yes.
all the way to the middle school, which is in Camden.
Yeah.
They stop on Summer Street to pick up one of the kids. Yeah.
But then they move to high school and they have to get that car.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you want to answer his question, the first part?
Yes, I believe that area is an area around this pump house that we're planning to look at.
No, not the pump house. So there's another bed. So, Stu, so to your question about the sewer expansion project that we're doing, that is not a part of the survey on this one. Now, the sidewalk aspect where the pump station is, that is a part of the consideration of what we can do around that with regards to this.
I guess I just think if someone's going to be talking about trying to build a sewer plant in the middle of this whole thing, that would be something that might want to come up for discussion.
It's been discussed. They're aware of it in some regards, but it doesn't play a particular part in this study.
Do we know if that's the area that they're talking about, is that already a dedicated park?
So I mean, it's not a dedicated park per se for that aspect of not being able to do anything else with it other than leaving it in a park. But for purposes of this study, I'm more than willing to have a conversation about this with anybody. But for purposes of Sewall and what they're here for, that doesn't have anything to do with this meeting.
Another question, 2 questions. Helen Shaw again, Pascal Avenue, the troublemaker. Okay, not quite your area, but let's say they redo the bridge and they put a sidewalk on the harbor side. What's that going to connect to? Because there's no other sidewalks over there.
There would need to be a sidewalk then that connected to
There's no place to put a sidewalk.
Central Street.
Second question. This week, they finally repainted all the crosswalks on that area. Way back when my son was in school, about 20 years ago, we got a crosswalk at Pleasant Street and Ship Street. It's used every day by all of us on Ship Street, 2 or 3 times a day, back and forth, strollers, dogs, walkers, bicyclists. It's not, MDOT has refused to paint that, and yet they have painted a crosswalk at the end of the bridge, which nobody uses, ever. I don't think I've ever seen anybody use that crosswalk.
So if somebody does come across the bridge on the sidewalk, what do they do? Do they then cross?
Well, there's a crosswalk that goes across the bridge and goes to that path that comes down the hill, which is dangerous even if you have good footing. And maybe 1 or 2 people in the summer go down there. You know, they stand on the ridge and take pictures, and then they may walk over and go down. But the point is, a crosswalk which is used every day by a lot of people, MDOT refuses to repaint, and they paint one that is used maybe by 2 or 3 people a week.
I would have to check to see why they refuse to do it. It's either
They
too
claim
close
it's
to
not
one or it
necessary.
doesn't have enough sight distance. Okay, they claim
And they
it's-
even took a hunk out of my yard to make a landing spot.
Phil Godet, I live on Pascal Avenue, but I'm on the corner of Ship Street. So there are at least 7 of us here tonight who have to cross that street right there,
Okay,
who
we
live
will
on Ship
definitely
Street.
look at that crosswalk
And it's a really bad place to try and cross, especially if cars are parked on either side. And, you know, the traffic, we already know that the traffic is fast there. I mean, we've lived there for 20 years, and it's been fast for a long time. And we've talked to the town about traffic calming before, but nothing's happened. So I think that's an important area right there between Pascal, Pleasant, and Ship Street to try and get back and forth across.
Okay, we will definitely look at that.
Do they do speed bumps in Maine?
They do. We usually call them speed tables, not speed bumps. They're a little bit calmer, but they certainly have been used for traffic calming. Yes, they are. A lot of public works departments do not like them, but you can also do things like bump outs so that you eliminate the parking in the shoulder for a short distance and you make it really narrow, so your crossing is narrower, and then that tends to slow speed. So there are lots of alternatives we can look at for traffic calming and crosswalk locations.
I have a question. John Veman, I live on Pleasant Street. There was a conversation a while back about cutting into the hillside by the pump house with a parking area. Is that still active, that conversation? Is
the parking at the
parking
pump
lot?
house.
Our select board member says that is not currently under consideration.
Okay.
So, go ahead, John, and then we'll go to Jan.
Jonathan Goss. I live in Rockport Village. Our property, our residence borders Pascal Avenue, and we are often down on Pascal Avenue and observe the traffic. The number of, I'm really kind of backing up Nance and the other comments about the crosswalks on Pascal. We've been there over 30 years, and there used to be numerous crosswalks crossing, and I thought it helped control the traffic. And I'd been told that they were not being done because of state rules. And this, I guess, is what I would propose that there be more crosswalks with bump outs. And the bottom of High Street doesn't have enough view for traffic that's moving through there at 45 miles an hour. But if traffic moved through there slowly, there'd be ample view to be able to get out safely. But I agree. It's, people come around there so fast, you are taking your chances to cut left.
So, Jan had something to say. Jan, go ahead and speak. Microphone's back. You can go pass that down there.
Yeah, I'm Jan Rosenbaum. I live on I don't want to get into a particular, because there's lots of time for particulars, and there's a million particulars, but I'm curious about the purpose, or rather the corporate philosophy of Sewall engineering in 2023. Traffic engineers for the last 150 years have designed so that traffic moves quickly and cars take the ultimate. I mean, I spent my first 35 years in Detroit, so I know about car-oriented cities. I'm kind of curious as to what Sewall's corporate philosophy is about dealing with the handling of traffic and the handling of small towns.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's a corporate philosophy, but in this case, we're looking at a complete streets. You know, we're looking at complete streets that provide for your vehicles, for your bicycles, and your pedestrians. So it's a complete streets, and it's really, Maine has become, instead of the old vehicle only caring about vehicle capacity and moving cars quickly, DOT has very much moved to a complete streets policy as well. And that's why they're supporting projects like this Village Partnership Initiative, is to slow traffic and make villages provide for pedestrians in all modes. So that's the philosophy, is to provide for all modes.
One further question, you may not be able to answer this. The Village Partnership Initiative from the state, we got at it right immediately when Mr. Remsen said, I live in West Rockport. We are a community of 5 villages in this area. And as usual, the idea of village has been applied strictly to the harbor area right now. The other villages in Rockport, would they be able to put in requests to MainDOT for village partnership initiatives, even though the main town has decided that only this part of the village is interested right now? Because I think that the other parts of this town also have their needs and would like to get their hands on some of the state and local money.
Yeah, well,
Do you want to answer?
I thought Doug was going to jump in, but
There's a few different programs. There's a planning partnership initiative and a village partnership initiative, and MDOT would be the ultimate guiding factor as to if the other villages could participate in that. So could it happen? Potentially. Do I have an answer? Does anybody have an answer? No.
Can you get to me or to Richard Remsen the contact at MDOT who might be able to answer?
That would be the Steve Cole that we mentioned. So I can introduce you both if you would like, and we can.
I would certainly like, and I think
there is like a time period, and because it's a grant-related aspect. So like Richard brought up, the sidewalk is only going to the school. There's other kids over there.
Right.
There's going to be a sidewalk eventually that goes the whole length of it.
Yeah.
It's going to be phased.
But all of the areas ought to have input into it.
Absolutely. But in terms of this particular project, what we submitted
This
here,
is right now.
this is just right here. Right now.
Despite Orion's trying to wave me off.
I'm trying to see the evil eye.
This portion of the Village Partnership Initiative does include a part that's supposed to promote the businesses that are there, to improve getting people to the businesses. So, I understand that we have Rockville, we have Simon Corner, and they don't have a lot of business right now. So that's why we focused on the area where we had our restaurants, hotels, galleries, library, bookstore. So
Sometimes if you focus first, the businesses follow.
right now, it's to try to improve transportation to help the businesses that are there.
Richard Remsen, do you know of any fines or penalties that would prevent neighbors from painting their own crosswalks?
I would just second the crosswalk. We had one at the end of Summer Street that got taken away and moved 20 yards up the road. It was like, we've always used this one. Why'd you move it?
okay, we will look at crosswalks in detail along all of it.
Hi, I'm Melanie Herring. I'm on Pascal Avenue, and I just have a question about the speed limits through town in the village. And is that part of the scope to try and lower the speed limits? Is that part
Do-
of the traffic calming initiative?
DOT is the only authority in the state who can control speed limits. But through this study, if we show, through our speed and delay runs and such, that there is a lot of speeding, it's something we could maybe talk to DOT about. But typically, DOT has traditionally used the 85th percentile speed to set speed limits. So if most of your traffic is doing 35, they're not going to change the speed limit. So it's a fine line. They really set the speed limit based upon the observed speeds that they're seeing in the 85th percentile. And it becomes then an enforcement issue. A lot of towns, if they do have enforcement and they have a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit and people know that there's a cop there and will ticket people and that he's there a couple times a week, it does bring your speeds down. So it's just not speed limit, it's also enforcement is the other thing. And if there's no enforcement ever, then even if you lowered the speed limit, it might not change a thing because people are just not, they're going to drive the speed they feel comfortable.
I'm just so curious about that because I know a speed study was done last spring, and I know there's a 5-mile-per-hour forgiveness, and so our speed limit on Pascal Avenue is 30 miles per hour, which is already a little too high as a pedestrian. When you're walking on the sidewalk on Pascal Avenue, there's about less than a 5-foot amount of space between you as a pedestrian and the cars whizzing by you.
Right.
There's really no protective barrier. In the winter, that becomes even more dangerous as sidewalks are slippery. It becomes even more questionable when you have people walking dogs, and some dogs don't like to interface with one another. Someone has to step off the sidewalk. And so there's a lot of village life that happens that isn't compatible with the speeds that cars are driving.
Does Rockport have a police department? Well, I mean, some towns just have your county government, but
They
or
do,
your county
and
sheriff.
when I email and I'm very vocal, they show up for a week or two, and then it's not consistent. And so,
They have one of those machines, that tells people how fast they're going,
That was
Which
something
I've
we
asked
discussed in the
for.
committee is a speed feedback sign. Sometimes will slow speeds.
right,
Sometimes it's
and
been
I
shown
was
to
in
be effective.
conversation with John Duke, and I don't know, that never happened, or I don't know
Okay.
why that didn't seem
Well,
possible.
speed is something we're certainly going to be looking at in the study, so hopefully we can draw some more attention to
And
it.
Wiscasset has a much lower speed limit, and they're controlled by Maine DOT, I imagine, and it's 25 miles per hour going through. And so I don't understand why we couldn't also accomplish that. Just my 2 cents. Thank you.
With regard to Melanie's last comment, I believe there is a state statute that says that the maximum speed for villages is 25 miles an hour. Is that not true?
I think in what's considered a true, there's different speeds that DOT uses for residential areas. So like part of Pascal is probably considered a residential neighborhood, and that's why the higher speed limit there than downtown. But
Well, those of us who live on Pascal, there's nothing on Pascal except a wine store and residences on both sides, all the way from Route 1 to the bridge. So I think that would be important to clarify whether or not, because when I spoke to the DOT people about this a couple of years ago, I just had one objection after another to do anything about speed calming.
Okay.
And when I raised that point, the answer was similar to yours. And I said, well, you haven't been on Pascal Avenue. It's a residential part of Rockport Village.
right. It's something we certainly will be looking at and trying to influence. And again, that can also be done through design. We can slow the speeds through, design of a sidewalk or design of bike lanes. Hopefully, we can make some positive improvements that way.
Can you clarify that part of the law for us as part of the study?
Yes, we can certainly look at.
I think the basic problem is that when you do a test to find out what the speed limit, what the speed is for the cars, if it comes at 30 then that's going to be considered okay. And what we're saying is that if you're talking about a village and improving the businesses in the village and improving living, then you really have to think about this speed limit. It is you can do tests just like they do on the highway at different times of day, and it will, by 5:30, it will be nice and quiet. But that doesn't solve the problem of people who live there and people who live all in the village, because all these roads that come down from Route 1 have much higher rates of speed than they should in terms of how people are actually driving. Everybody wants to get a place quickly, so they look for the cut-throughs. But anyway, I just don't think you can base it on what the machine says. It has to be based on what's safe for.
Yeah, when DOT does do a speed study, they look at the density of the development, the number of driveways, the number of curb cuts, the number of businesses, the number of houses, and the 85th percentile speed. They look at those things, but they may need to be looked at again here.
I can understand that, but I still think they don't take into consideration that people are living in these houses, and whether the houses are very close together or where they're spread out. Expectation of safe driving in a community.
Yeah, no, speeding is an issue statewide. I was just at a transportation conference over in Vermont with the state traffic engineer, and speeding is one of his concerns, and he is, rethinking the 85th percentile speed, because, you go out and you do the 85th percentile speed, and it shows that people are going 5 miles over, so you increase the speed limit to 35, but then they start doing 40. So, I mean, he's trying to think of ways to control speed as well. So it's an issue statewide right now. How do you get people to obey the speed limits? So it's certainly something that we will be looking at.
Hi, my name is Bill Leone, and it seems as though the central focus here of a lot of people has been the speed through downtown. If you don't solve that problem, all of the other things that are wonderful that you want to do are not going to happen. They may happen, but they're not going to be very effective. I was in a town out west, a ski town out west, that reduced their speed downtown, very similar downtown to what we have here, to 15 miles per hour. And they put sleeping policemen throughout downtown. In other words, they built up a brick area that was probably 8 to 10 feet in width. People say, well, what about plowing? This was in the middle of ski areas in Colorado. It was very effective. Everybody goes 15 miles per hour. They have very high fines for speeding, and it works, and it changes the whole tenor of downtown. All of a sudden, people realize there is a downtown. It isn't just something they're passing through. So you really have to focus on that. I know you've got a challenge with the state, but if you don't overcome that, I think it's going to be very difficult to really take advantage of all the things that you want to do.
Yeah. No, it's definitely something we're looking at, and like I said, also possibly designing traffic calming so that not only, and again, that's what you're talking about is speed tables. That's something that can basically force the traffic to slow down if they're not doing it voluntarily. So we will certainly be looking at speed.
So just before we go into other questions, I know you had a few more slides. Did you want to go
No,
forward,
we
or
just
you want
had
to just keep
slides of
going?
other areas. I mean, just in case people had concerns at different locations, but
Okay.
that's all we.
This is good then? Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
So
people
Stu, I
mostly.
saw your hand up, but I saw one over here first. So I'll go there and then over to you and then to Kristen.
To give you a little bit of history on Pascal, there's a retail store that's there now, but that used to be a school right there in the corner of Route 1 and Pascal. So, now it's a business, but I think historically that was the beginning of the village. And when you travel from Rockland to Camden and you want to make that sweeping turn, like any good raceway, that
Yeah.
curve is designed in such a way that you can accelerate around the curve.
That's true.
So if you don't try to do traffic calming exiting Route 1, you're not going to, it'll be more difficult to slow the traffic down further down.
Yeah,
this.
definitely squaring that up with slow speeds and slow those turns.
Hi, I'm Kristen. I live on Pascal. Kristen Johns. I live on Pascal. I hate to change the subject from the speeding because it's super important, and I would like to see it lowered to like 20 miles per hour would be lovely. But I did have a question. I've heard you mention and a few people mentioning about sidewalks, maybe on the other side of the bridge, and then how that would connect down Pascal. And I'm just wondering how that would look and how that would affect the people that live on that side of the street. Would the sidewalk be in their front yard, or would it still be in the street part? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I live on the other side of Pascal, so I'm just wondering if a sidewalk was built, would it be running through my front yard?
No, I think they were intending to cross at High Street. So there would be a crosswalk at High based on the concept plans that I have seen. The sidewalk would not run all the way down Pascal on that side. It would just be crossing the bridge on that side.
Oh, okay.
And ideally, it's a downtown. I would like to see sidewalks both sides of the bridge, but it depends upon what DOT comes back with. But I think it's something the committee should push DOT for, if at all feasible, that you would like sidewalks on both sides, but.
So
Thank you.
Move the mic down, Stu. It's coming to you. Go John, and then we'll go down to Stu.
So I know that Sewall is an engineering firm, and you know that you're going to be making recommendations, but traffic speed in the village is a big deal. And I hear you saying that there's constraints because of how the state measures things and does things, but I also hear you saying that there are people in New England trying to figure out how to solve that. Could your study come back to Rockport and say, this is what it's going to take, engineering and political, for Rockport to become the example of solving this problem in a New England village?
I think it's early to say, but it would be nice.
So, I guess I don't quite understand why you could not include all of Pascal Avenue as part of the village. I mean, you start at the intersection of Route 1, and you have a wonderful store up there that gets a tremendous amount of village people going to it. And then the wine shop is also a tremendous part of the downtown village area. So in my mind, the village starts at Route 1 where Pascal Avenue starts and comes all the way down through. So if that's the study area, why aren't we talking more about what's going to happen to, I mean, the people here are talking about Pascal Avenue, but it seems like that should be a focus of this thing, this study, as well as when you cross the bridge. But
Early discussions, Pascal Avenue was, the speed on Pascal was definitely
One of our concerns,
Yeah.
yes.
And I guess the other question I have is, everybody keeps talking about this as being the state road, and I presume that's a carryover from the days when that was Route 1. At what point can the town of Rockport decide we'll let them build the new bridge first, but after the bridge gets built,
You want to take
we dump them from, I mean, we're trying to save a little money on street maintenance by having it a state road, so we're getting money, we're getting funding from the state.
I think the state would let you take away their roads.
Because they wouldn't have to pay for maintaining it anymore. I believe they do, don't they? We do.
Can you go over the
Hey, hold on, Jen. Here you go.
I'm sorry. I just wondered if you could, today is the first of the public meetings. This is a long process. Do you have an outline and an expected calendar that you think you'll be following in terms of other meetings and when reports will be done and so forth?
Yes, we did have a schedule. Basically, we were looking to finish our data collection by the end of July originally, but now we're pushing that into September because we're waiting for the hotel to open to do some of that traffic data collection. So originally, we had future conditions analysis being done in the late fall, preliminary recommendations between November and January. So that may be pushing a month or so beyond. But the original draft final report was scheduled for March of next year, so probably April of next year, because we're going to lose a month in data collection. So, and then there'll be one more public meeting at the point that we've developed preliminary recommendations to get total public input and buy-in on those preliminary recommendations before we develop final ones.
And then what does the town do at that point? Once you have done your final recommendations, what is our next step?
I mean, I think the next step is for the town to decide what pieces they want to implement and to go to DOT for funding, to request funding. And that's one reason you may not want to give the road back to DOT yet, because you're going to probably want them to build some of this.
Anybody else? So, we got one over here.
Hi there, my name's Allie Angel. I live on Russell, right here. I'm just curious if this intersection is part of the study, right here outside the library, because the school buses drop children off there. This intersection, the crosswalk is really long, and I watch kids out of my home office all day long crossing there, and I'm really concerned. Cars speed really quickly through here, and also because the intersection is so wide, a lot of cars use this as an opportunity to do a U-turn right in the middle of the crosswalk, and there's children crossing often to go down to Bay Chamber with their instruments as well as to come into the library. So I just want to, I'm curious if that's part of this study.
Yeah, we certainly can look at that.
Thank you so much.
Hold on, right over here and then to you.
I just want to emphasize again, you really need to talk to the Camden Rockport Pathways Committee, because they have done data collection. Every 3 or 4 years, we did a survey of all the sidewalks in terms of what they needed to be done. They've talked to DOT about going out to the school and all the way to Route 17, and they've got a wealth of information. You may as well not repeat the...
No, absolutely. We will talk to them.
And just for the record, they were invited to this.
Yeah, okay.
Will climate mitigation issues be taken into account
That was not part of our study, no.
so that more permeable surfaces and so forth isn't part of looking at transportation?
No, I mean, we're looking at, where we want to add facilities for bikes and peds to provide for complete streets, but no, climate issues were not part of the study.
Is that the town's view too?
Repeat your question.
Well, the Rockport Conservation Commission is spending a lot of time thinking about mitigating the effects. We've had several major rain events with a lot of road washouts. Much of the area that you're looking at is impervious surface, doesn't handle runoff very well, and so forth. And it seems to me that any comprehensive look at the transportation network serving Rockport Village ought to take these factors into account.
And I'll even bogart the microphone, sorry. To add on to what Bob was saying, I'm also part of the Conservation Commission, Bill Bowe. Looking at, for instance, greenhouse gas emission issues and the ability to transfer transportation from vehicles to more pedestrian-related bikes, electric vehicles, whatever, that's all part of this as well.
I mean, ideally, yes, we're trying to provide facilities so that people can bicycle and walk instead of using vehicles.
And I think my point there is that you can use that as part of the benefit provided to the village and subsequently the state as part of a sales job, frankly, to the state, because they're quite concerned about those sorts of issues. So I think collectively, we can sort of knit that together if we sort of take the time to pay attention to it.
Do you have anything else?
Nope, we don't. We came to listen to the public.
Okay. Hey, Jeff, if you could, just so everyone can see us, can you pull up the town website and I will walk everybody through where this survey is, just so we're all on the same page? Okay. Oh, you need this keyboard? I guess that would be helpful there.
Okay, boss.
Can you make it full screen? Okay, so when you go to the front page, you would go down to projects. No, up,
one
up,
over.
up. You don't go down, you just go over to projects. And then on projects, you'll see the traffic infrastructure study. And then in here, you'll see a little blurb and some relevant information. So you can see the letter of intent that was submitted. You can see the request for proposal, and you can see the winning proposal as well. And over to the right, you see take our survey in big letters.
Yep.
And so if you want, you can go ahead and click on that. And it'll take you here to Viewshed's survey that put together. It's a very, the video's not playing right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, they did a really good job with this website, and there is an aerial view with a drone, so you can see a little bit about what we're talking about. And then it gives some additional information, and down at the bottom there's the survey that you would click on to answer the following questions.
Will you be publishing minutes of the meeting tonight?
Of this, so this will be recorded. This is on YouTube right now. So if you go to our YouTube page and you go to the Village Partnership Task Force page on that, you'll be able to see this meeting here. But there will not be a transcription per se. Are y'all typing this up?
Yes.
Is there anybody from the media here? Apparently not. I just wondered if anybody from the media was here.
No, they were informed of this meeting, but there might be something typed up afterwards. They might watch the recording.
Well, generally these days they watch the YouTube.
All right. Well, if there's anything else that you would like to discuss with the group here before? No? Okay, well, so that website's going to be our landing page for public information. Obviously, if you received an email from me or if you're signed up on Civic Ready, we're going to also utilize that to pump out this information. We'll use Facebook as well. So however you stay tuned into town events, that's probably how you will find any future events that we're doing or data that we've collected. So Doug, did you want to say something? You were here.
I just want to thank everyone who came tonight. You know, when you're on a committee like this, your biggest fear isn't that people are going to show up and give you a hard time. It's that nobody's going to show up. And then they'll be asking later, well, you know, where were you when this all happened? So I really appreciate this good turnout and all the questions we had. I know Denise, our select board member, has been taking notes. So your feedback will go to the committee, and we'll just try to keep in touch with you all as best we can. So thank you all very much for coming.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
All right, Jeff, are we still recording?
Sure.
Done? Okay.